Now, one of the things that we know is that only the worst enemies attack the Jews. You know that people, that a civilization, that a country, that a leader, the people are rotten if they organize their politics against the Jews. It goes without saying. It's always true. It's always true in history, right? So those people are always wrong, always evil, always seeking something. The least of it is the destruction of the Jews. The most of it is what the Jews represent to them and to others. So here we are representing something which we know is wonderful, the civilization that we carry, that we want to live in the image of God, that we want to make God proud of who we are and represent that in history and among our contemporaries. And then people attack us. And this particular attack that's been going on, since 1945, this is the most lopsided war in human history, the war against Israel and the war against the Jews. There's never been a war that outsized. So we cannot possibly fight it on our own. And just parenthetically, you see, this was the one thing that Zionism got wrong. It got everything right, but it thought that it could stop anti-Semitism because Jews would no longer be in the diaspora, they would be in their own country. Well, it turns out that it's even easier to attack Jews in their own country than it was to attack them in the diaspora. And you can attack them in both places at once, which means that it didn't solve the problem of anti-Semitism. It solved many problems for the Jewish people and made us much stronger and more wonderful and able to defend ourselves to some degree. But we still need others to understand how important it is for them to stand up against evil. And so when you see people like Douglas, who does it so magnificently, who does it, so well that one thinks, hey, I might as well hang up my task here. Let him do it for us. That's how good. It's not just that one is grateful. I think that it is very instructive for us that we have to begin understanding, not to be surprised by those who join us and speak for us, but we should begin to be surprised by those who don't. We really should understand that this is something that we can't demand of others, but we certainly have to expect it of others, and we have to articulate that expectation.
Douglas.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much to Ruth, and thank you everyone for joining us. Particularly thank you to Ruth for those very fulsome comments. I should say, I'm sure that there are many people on this call tonight who will have known in some way both the victims of last night's attack, and I know that you're all in our thoughts as well, in particular at this moment. I would just add two things to what Ruth just said. One is that there has clearly been, and I think all of us have felt it, in recent weeks, and actually I'd say even in recent days, a boiling up of the usual lies that we've all put up with for the last 19 months, and indeed for many years before that, but particularly in the last period since October the 7th, there's been there was a visible boiling up of the lies, the defamations, the something must be done rhetoric. And that comes obviously from things like the UN report earlier this week, which was claiming that 14,000 Gazan babies were going to die in 48 hours unless the world acted. And then, of course, the report was withdrawn, but as everybody knows, the lie by that point had gone all around the world, and all of the media that splashed with that and all of the online accounts were running with it. Of course, they'd done their job, and it didn't matter if the report was retracted. But the sheer pressure that it seemed to me, I commented on it to a friend just a couple of days ago, the sheer pressure that seemed to be building up in recent days, and it was coming from the far right in America as well as from the far left, was his assertion that something must be done. That there's a podcaster who Donald Trump went on his podcast, Barron Trump's suggestion before the election, called Theo Von. He's a man of no brain, but he's got a significant following. And I noticed 2 days ago, for once, he did a piece to camera saying, you know, how can I be silent in the face of this genocide? And it seems, you know, there's a genocide going on. And he said, I'm not a geologist, but, which was a opportunity for a small laugh in dark times. He said, I'm not a geologist, but I believe there's a genocide going on. And can we allow this to happen? Surely we've got to stop it. That was coming from all sorts of sources, the obvious ones with huge platforms, and from every direction. The front page of the BBC for the whole of the last week has had stories 1, 2, and 3 about Gaza. And the rest of the world just drifts down the front page. And it seemed to me that all of this pushing of these lies, of these claims, were all boiling to this challenge that people were putting to each other of how can we allow this purported genocide to be happening and not do something? And the available something was revealed last night. And as you said in your opening remarks, Jonathan, the extraordinary thing about this is that, as many of us have said, that feels inevitable, at the same time as not taking any agency away from the killer. But it seems inevitable because of this drumbeat of the claims that were being made, added to the rhetoric which has been normalized in the period since October the 7th. And as I always say, actually from October the 7th. I've said many times in my column in the New York Post, and I've said again today for tomorrow, that, you know, all of these people who were saying to globalize the Intifada on campuses, some of them were totally ignorant. Some of them didn't know that their contemporaries, including American students, were murdered in a university campus in an intifada by people who agreed with them about the advantages of intifada. But all of this period of delegitimization, of demonization, of the pumping around of lies, was obviously at some point going to produce somebody or some people who thought, fine, I will act. And, you know, one of the things that's been startling about the coverage today, as well as some of it being very dignified and appropriate, one of the startling things about it is, of course, the reporting of the fact that the victims worked at the Israeli embassy, as if this was a targeted attack against Israeli embassy officials. Now, of course, that wouldn't itself be surprising, because just in recent weeks, we've learned that 2 terror cells were arrested in the UK, sent by the Iranian government to carry out assassinations in Britain, including an attack on the Israeli embassy in London. So there was clearly a growing movement of this, and something was going to happen. But the fact that the newspapers and the media have said, where they have, that this was an attack on 2 Israeli embassy staff, it seems to me also diminishes the nature of the crime, because the gunman, the murderer, could not possibly have known that. He was hanging out at the Jewish Museum in order to target Jews. And that seems to me to be something which is an escalation of the rhetoric into action that so many people have been trying to encourage, and now they've got the fruit of their labor.